Aloha everybody, and welcome to another episode of Kai's Creatures. So last time we went back a few thousand years to discuss the scarabs of ancient Egypt. But what do you say this time we go way back? Back to the origins of insects. Now I would love to show you the progenitor of all insect kind, but unfortunately that means we'd have to get a time machine and travel back over 400 million years. I'm just kidding. I have them right here. This is the silverfish, Lepisma sacarnium, a creature that most people rarely even think about and even fewer people actually like. They are so named for their glittery silver scales and the way they sort of swim back and forth when they walk. They, along with firebrats and about 550 other species, make up the order Zygentoma, the most primitive of all insects. In order to understand the silverfish and the order Zygentoma, we have to go far back in time, back to the Silurian period over 400 million years ago. The Earth was a very different place back then, and was going through an event known as the Silurian-Devonian Terrestrial Revolution, where the first land animals were starting to come onto land full-time. These were all, of course, arthropods, the ancestors of the millipedes and centipedes, the myriapods, as well as of scorpions and spiders, the arachnids. These were the only competition for the early insects back then, and so the landscape was very different, with only a few arthropods and a few low-growing plants. Members of the order Zygentoma are truly the granddaddy of all insects, from bees, to mantids, to beetles. If it's got 6 legs, it owes its lineage to the Zygentoma. Keep in mind, insects make up 80% of all species on Earth. That means these little guys are the granddaddy of 80% of species. That means they are the progenitor of 10 quintillion separate animals that are alive today. That's quintillion, with a qu, as in a 10 followed by 18 zeros. There are that many bugs in the world, folks. Give or take a few billion. Now, as expected of the granddaddy of all hexapods, these guys are very primal, very primitive, very simple. Later, insects evolved to have things like wings and stingers and really hard exoskeletons and biochemical defenses, but these guys are as basic as a bug can get. They are literally what you had when bugs were in beta. Even their life cycle is remarkably simple compared to insects of today. Most modern insects are divided into 2 branches, the holometabolous insects and the hemimetabolous insects. Holometabolous insects include things like the lepidopterans, the butterflies and moths, the dipterans, the true flies, the hymenopterans, the ants, bees, and wasps, and the coleopterans, the beetles. These are the sort of critters where the baby form, or the larva, look completely different from the adults, almost as if they're 2 different animals. Your hemimetabolous insects are things like your roaches, your mantids, and the hemipterans, also known as the true bugs. These particular insects, the babies look basically similar to their parents, but without wings. With both the holometabolous and the hemimetabolous insects, though, once they reach adult form, they're done. They don't grow anymore. If they lose a limb or get injured, they can't regenerate it. That's it. They're done. Their adult form is decided and is what they stick with for their entire life. Now, the Zygentoma, on the other hand, are neither of these things. They are ametabolous insects. They do not have a nymph form, and they do not have a final adult form. What they do is basically, they are born as tiny versions of the adults, but unlike the hemimetabolous insects, that there are some physical changes that occur in the final molt, the Zygentoma don't have a final molt. They reach sexual maturity after a certain amount of time, but they continue to grow throughout their entire lives, much more like crustaceans. And their lives are actually very long for an insect, somewhere between 4 to 8 years depending on the species and conditions. Their method of reproduction is also really strange and indirect as well. See, what happens is the male will like create this string of like a silky material of sorts, or maybe like some kind of proto-silk, and he will deposit his spermatophore, which is a little packet that contains his genetic material, onto that string, and then somehow convince the female to crawl across it, and then it will just get stuck to her, and she will then be fertilized, and we have eggs. Another interesting thing about them is there is no such thing as breeding season for these little guys. They will go all day, every day. Like, they can reproduce at a rate of about 1 to 3 eggs per day, or sometimes in clusters of 2 to 20 or so. But that's every day of their lives that they can do this. They don't have the same explosive rate of reproduction that cockroaches often do, but there's no stopping them. It's none of this 2 clutches per year stuff. Nah, they can do a baby a day for their entire life. Once they've reached sexual maturity, that is. And then, of course, that life is 4 to 8 times longer than most other insects. It's an unusual reproductive strategy among arthropods, but seeing as how they're still going strong after 400 million plus years, I'd say it seems to work. And like most extremely early land arthropods, they are also detritivores, much like millipedes or isopods are. Now, they have a diet that is very rich in starch and cellulose, so that's why they're often chewing on your clothes or your notebooks or the glue in your wallpaper and things like that. These sort of nutrients are what they need to keep going. And during the Middle-Late Silurian period, when they first appeared, there was an abundance of this on land. Pretty much the only thing on land at that point was club mosses, ferns, low-growing woody shrubbery. Flowers and trees hadn't even been invented yet, so it was all just real, simple, rough, tough plants. Things that a cellulose-rich diet is comprised of. And atmospheric humidity is a lot harder to come by nowadays than it was in the Silurian and the Carboniferous periods, so that's why you usually see them hanging around in your bathroom and in your kitchen at night. Humans have unknowingly provided them with a much safer place to live and a much more reliable food source. It's funny how our presence is detrimental to species that are actually helpful to us, but we are actually very helpful to species that are no good to us, like cockroaches and silverfish. Life's not fair, I guess. That's not to say that silverfish are useless, though. They are actually lending scientists a big hand in the production of biofuels. Along with carpenter ants, termites, wood-chewing wasps, wood-boring beetles, etc., silverfish are helping to lead the way to a greener future. And I can't stress this enough, but the world we know and love was built on the backs of insects. If humans disappeared tomorrow, the insects would be fine. The silverfish might have to find something to eat other than wallpaper, but they would be fine. If insects disappeared overnight, however, humans are completely screwed within a single generation. We cannot live without them. Insects are not just important to the natural order, they are the natural order. Like I said, insects alone, not even counting other arthropods and not even counting other invertebrates, are 80% of species on Earth right now. And all of that started with the order Zygentoma, with the silverfish. So next time you want to curse their very existence because your socks or your wallpaper got nibbled a little, maybe consider showing just a bit more respect. But that's all I've got to say about that, so remember to like and subscribe, take care of each other, take care of the earth, and I will see you in the next one, folks. Mahalo and aloha.